How do you know when an introvert likes you? How do you know when he's someone who cares? Maybe there's a guy in your life who's kind of quiet, reserved, maybe a little bit shy, but you have a sneaking suspicion that this guy actually likes you. How can you be certain about this? How can you be sure that this introvert guy actually likes you? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Hello, my name's Matthew Coast, and welcome to Commitment Connection. If you didn't know, I'm actually an introvert myself, and so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And so let's talk about the signs that an introvert guy actually likes you. So sign number one is that he makes an effort to be around you as much as possible. And so sometimes with introvert guys, he might not chase you like you might expect a normal guy to just start chasing you and pursuing you and doing all that kind of stuff. But he might end up wanting to be around you and hang out around you, and he puts himself in situations where he can be around you whenever he can. So introverts, they tend to be those people who, if they don't like you, they like avoid you at all costs, right? They're like, they see you and they're like hiding under their desk or whatever. And maybe even if they do like you, they might do that. But if they do try to be around you, you know for sure that he definitely wants to be around you and that he likes you and that he wants to connect with you. If you're here with us right now, say hi and tell us where in the world you're watching this in the comments section. It's cool to see women from all over the world watching these live streams. All right, so number two is he's making an effort to start a conversation with you, even if it's a little bit of a weird conversation, right? So he tries to talk to you, he tries to text you, he tries to message you, or he tries to start a conversation with you, even if it's one that doesn't even really make a whole lot of sense to you. And it's one of those things like... And this isn't always the case, right? So as an introvert myself, I used to be really bad at conversations. I'd like say things and be like, and just sit there and think about it and be like, did what I just say, was that weird? Did I just say something weird? And so it's one of those things, like a lot of people that sometimes spend a lot of time by themselves will not be that. Sometimes they'll try to communicate or connect or do something, and it might come across as a little bit like socially awkward or something like that. But he's trying to make an effort, right? And that's the important point here, is that he's trying to make an effort. He's trying to connect with you. He wants to connect with you, and that shows you that he actually likes you. So number three is that he may observe you from afar at first. So one of the telltale signs of a lot of introverts is that they tend to take time getting to know somebody. So they tend to be one of those people that they don't let a lot of people into their lives, and they especially don't let a lot of people into their personal lives or their private lives. And so sometimes they'll just take time getting to know somebody before they really kind of let them in, because it's really a big, they kind of look at their space as almost sacred or private or something that they only allow certain people into. And so if he's one of those kinds of extroverts or introverts and he's bringing you into that space, it might take him a little bit of time at first, and so he might go slow. And sometimes we have women in our community that are like, why is this guy going so slow? And it could be a number of different things, but if he's an introvert, that could be a really big reason for it. But he might end up just observing you from afar, checking you out from afar, obviously in a non-creepy way. He's just like, hey, comes, I don't know, maybe that was weird. Okay, number four is he opens up to you. And so most introverts, they don't really open up to a lot of people. And so if he's telling you things about himself, if you are somebody that he wants to be connected to. So if he enjoys talking to you and he tries to keep the conversation going and he's opening up and he's kind of doing these things, with you in a conversation, he's doing it in order to stay connected. And the reason that he's trying to stay connected is because he likes you. So anytime he does that, then you know that you're special to him. You're different for him. Number 5 is he's taking risks for an introvert, right? So many introverts are super reserved. And so if he starts taking risks by maybe he's going somewhere with you or doing something that he normally would never go and do, he's doing that because he likes you, right? If he's speaking to you and normally he's like just hanging out by himself or he doesn't talk to people or whatever, right? But he's talking to you, he's starting conversations with you, he's having conversations to you, that can be a really risky thing for a lot of introverts, depending on their personality and a lot of other things around that as well, or how much they've kind of pulled themselves out of their box and talked to a whole bunch of other people and all that kind of stuff. And so if he's doing risky things around you for an introvert, that's a really, really good sign. So number 6 is that he shares something deeply personal with you. So maybe he shares some kind of fear, or maybe it's not even as dramatic as that. Maybe it's just a goal or a hobby or something like that, right? He's just sharing with you. He's connecting with you. He's bringing you into his world. And, if you like an introvert and he's connecting with you by bringing up kind of personal things, then you know that he's kind of into you. He kind of likes you. If you get what I'm talking about right now, say I get it in the chat. If you don't get what I'm talking about, then go ahead and ask a question and I'll get to it here in a little bit. And also at the end here, I'm going to talk about what you can do to kind of pull an introvert out of his shell a little bit more and get him to connect with you more and get him to kind of step up and start moving things forward a little bit more. So number 7 is he invites you into his personal space. And so what he's doing may seem a little bit weird to you, right? If he's an introvert and he spends a lot of time by himself, a lot of introverts are into things that extroverts, if you're an extrovert, you're used to. It's funny, like I was actually just hanging out with a friend of mine yesterday with this extrovert, and she was like, it was funny, she's all about talking to people and being in conversations and hanging out with people all the time. And my friend and I are both introverts, and we're like, yeah, I could spend, 5 days. It's like one of those things, like when the pandemic hit, it was like, this didn't even really, it's not a whole lot different than what my normal life is like when the pandemic hits, like hanging out by myself most of the time anyway, and whatever. Anyway, so if he brings you into his personal space to share, whatever weird introvert things that he's into, it's because you're special to him and he's connecting with you and he's being vulnerable around you and he's bringing you into his world, which means that he probably really likes you a lot. And so let's talk about what, if you like this introvert, right? This introvert, if you're into this introvert and you're like, okay, how do I get him to kind of step up and lead this relationship that I want to have with him if he's not quite doing all the things, right? Because sometimes a lot of introverts, what happens is they spend so much time by themselves at home or whatever, even growing up, that a lot of times they're a little bit clueless as to what they should be doing in dating or how they should be connecting with someone or any of that kind of stuff. That was definitely my case when I was growing up. I actually first got into the dating advice industry as a client because I was an introvert. I had no idea what was going on. I had no clue that I was supposed to be pursuing women, that I was supposed to be approaching women, that I was supposed to be starting conversations to women with women. I thought they would like come to me somehow and it would just happen and, all that kind of stuff. And so I had to learn about what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be attractive, what it meant to connect with a woman, what women were like and what they did and all that kind of stuff, because it was completely foreign to me. I had no clue when I became an adult how to connect with women in any way, shape, or form. And so it might be something that he doesn't really get. And so the first thing that you want to do if you want him to start stepping up and leading and kind of taking charge in the relationship is to encourage behaviors that you want to see more of with him, because he'll look for those things, right? He'll check those things. He'll be like, okay, well, what's normal behavior here? What's not normal behavior here? Assuming that he's got at least some level of awareness. He'll want to kind of figure out what he should be doing. And so you want to just encourage any kind of behavior that you want to see more of. So encourage him to connect with you, encourage him to take the lead, encourage him to initiate contact, initiate conversations, keep going with conversations. And the best way, in my opinion, to do this is to create an association, right? Link it, frame, like I talk about in the Love Frames Toolkit, frame the conversation around the idea of it being attractive, right? Because he wants to be attractive to you. And so if you're like, okay, when you do this, I find it really attractive. Oh, it was so attractive when you reached out to me, or it feels so good when you're reaching out to me or connecting with me, or, I really love it when guys do this, or any of that kind of stuff, right? Like I talk about that in great detail in the Love Frames Toolkit. But just, create associations around what you want him to do and what he does do with it being attractive. And most guys, even if he's an introvert, will start picking up on that, and he'll start wanting to do those things because he wants you to feel like he's attracted, like you're attracted to him, like he's attractive to you. All right, so number 2 is this is a huge one too, is you want to get his blueprint for communication in a relationship. And I hear women do this all the time. We get women that are like, oh my God, this guy, like, he hasn't talked to me in 2 days. Like, what is his problem? I've completely written him off at this point, and I don't think he even loves me anymore. And I'm going to find a new guy, and I'm going to block this guy. And it's like, whoa, especially as an introvert, I'm like, 2 days? Like, that's crazy. Even in the men's dating space, depending on who you follow in the men's dating space, there's a whole lot of different people that are teaching in the men's dating space. But some of them will talk about, especially when you're first in the initial dating phases of meeting a woman, but, only reaching out to her, only connecting with her, every 5 to 7 days, something like that. And so you have to when you're connecting with any man, even if he's not an introvert or whatever, if you want to stay out of some kind of weird thing where you have this miscommunication about what should be doing, and he must not like me because he hasn't messaged me in, a day or 2 or whatever, then what you need to do is find out what his blueprint is for communication in a relationship, right? Because he may not want as much communication as a normal person would in a relationship. He might think of relationships as like, hey, I connect with her once every few days or whatever. And so with any guy that you meet, you should find out what his blueprint is. Like, what's normal for him in communicating and connecting, and talk about your kind of what's normal for you and what you feel like is normal. Because if you think that connecting every single day is supposed to be what a guy does if he likes you, and he thinks that connecting every 3 days or 5 days or whatever is what a guy should do when he likes somebody, then you're going to be very, very confused or sad, or you're going to feel like he ghosted you, right? Like a lot of times I get women that are like, he ghosted me, right? And then I'll have them send out that forward text message that I have in the Forever Woman program. And the guy will respond back and he's like, oh, I thought you didn't like me. Or he's like, whatever, right? Like, it's only been a couple days and it's not a big deal. Or, there's a lot of different reactions that they get. A lot of times the guy thinks that she ghosted him because of a whole bunch of other things, right? And so you want to find out what his blueprint is, find out what's normal for him and what he thinks is normal as far as communication goes in a relationship and in a dating sense. So number 3 is you want to give him some extra time and some extra space. So he might want to see you, but he might also need some space. At the very same time, right? It's one of those things. There's a joke in the introvert space where we want to go hang out with somebody, and then we like go hang out with them for like a half an hour, and we're like, okay, well, I gotta go, it's kind of like this running introvert joke where you want to hang out with people, but you also want your space, and it feels kind of uncomfortable, and it feels like a whole bunch of different things for a lot of people, right? I've got a lot of social anxiety. I'm an introvert, and I have a lot of social anxiety, and so I've kind of expanded that over time because I've worked on it over and over and over again over a period of years. And so now I can go and hang out in crowds and stuff, and it's not that big of a deal for me for the most part for a while anymore. But a lot of guys, they don't want to hang out, especially if they're an introvert. They don't want to go hang out with people for long periods of time and stuff because it just drains them sometimes. And it depends on the person, right? Every person is different. And so for me, for instance, I'm not as good in crowds. I can do it for a little bit, but after a while I have to go like sit and be by myself or whatever. However, if I'm just like with one person, I'm just focusing on just having a conversation with one person, I can do that forever, especially if it's a deep, interesting conversation about psychology or life or human potential or some of the topics that I'm interested in. I can do that forever. So number 4 is you want to tell him that if he needs space, just to let you know. And so if he needs space at any point, just say, hey, if you ever need any space, just let me know, and I won't be offended or any of that kind of stuff. And if I ever need any space, I'll let you know. And then you've kind of created an opening for that person to just be like, hey, I need some space right now. And as somebody who might not be an introvert or somebody that wants to connect or somebody that's, in a position where you're with somebody like that, it might feel a little bit hurtful to you, but at least you know. And then you can connect with somebody else and complain to them that your boyfriend doesn't want to connect with you as much as you want to connect with him or whatever you end up doing with your friends and all that kind of stuff. So all right, so I'm just going to go back over the signs real quick, and then here's what I want you to do. If you're with us right now, post what is your biggest challenge or frustration in your dating or relationship life right now. So what's your biggest challenge or what's your biggest frustration going on in dating or relationships right now? And so let's talk about the signs that an introvert likes you. Number 1, he makes an effort to be around you as much as he possibly can. Number 2 is he's making an effort to start a conversation, even if it's a little bit weird. Number 3 is he may observe you from afar at first. Number 4 is he opens up to you. Number 5 is he's taking risks that would be risks for like an introvert. Number 6 is he shares something deeply personal. Number 7 is he invites you into his personal space. And then if you want to encourage him to kind of step up and be the man and lead the relationship, what you want to do is encourage behaviors that you want, right? And communicate what it is that you want so that he knows. Number 2 is you want to get his blueprint for communication in a relationship. Number 3 is you want to give him extra space. And number 4, you want to let him know that if he needs space, just to let you know. And so that's it. Let's see what everybody has to say here. Hello, Ivy. Hello, Adelaide. Hello, Lanny. So Christy says they may be indirect, but they will make their feelings known. One introvert guy was into me, was asking to hang out, offered to pick me up when he was going to the store and more. Woo. There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Cassie. Hi, Ivy. Ivy says she's learning a lot from me. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Jenny says, hello from Ohio, London. Doop-de-doop-de-doop-de-doo. Maggie says she's one of those introverts. All right. Introvert power. We're all here for the introverts. Introvert power. We got it. We got it, girl. So Cassie says, what if you know he likes you, but he doesn't come forward? Well, it's one of those things, and I talk about this as well, because it's so you can take, like, if you decide that you want to take a risk, right? And you're like, hey, I kind of like this guy, but he's not kind of moving anything forward. You can kind of take some risks and, ask him things or say things to him, tell him that you'd love to, you'd love it if he'd ask you out sometime or something like that, right? It's not a big deal, right? Like there's some coaches out there that are like, never, ever do this, never, initiate contact, never say anything, never, push anything forward, never. Well, there are things that you never want to do. Like, you never want to chase a man, but this isn't chasing, right? If you tell him that you'd love it if he'd take you out, what you're doing is you're giving him an invitation, right? And I'm a huge fan of invitations. And so you create an invitation. You're like, hey, I would really love it if you did this, right? And then you're throwing the ball in his court, you're hitting the ball over the net, and you're waiting for him to hit the ball back, right? You're seeing if he's going to take the ball and run with it, which he may or he may not. And so you don't want to be overly invested in what happens and what doesn't happen. You can just throw it out there, and if it works, that's great. And if it doesn't, that's fine too, because you're not overly invested. And if he wants to be in a great relationship with you, he needs to step up, he needs to move things forward, and he needs to be the man in the relationship, which is something that I talk about in detail in the Forever Woman Formula. If you don't have it yet, you can go check it out at theforeverwomanformula.com. Go watch that video that's there and sign up for the program for free. And if you want to stay a part of the community, you can stay a part of the community for a fee and get coaching and all kinds of other stuff. So go check it out. Maria McBean says, hi, love your videos. I'm in New York. Well, hello, Miss New York. Ambivert. Rachel says, if the girl and the guy are introverted, how do they get together? Well, somebody has to throw out an invitation, and the other person has to take that invitation and run with it. And so it's one of those things. I've been in relationships with introvert women before, and I'm a little bit different than most people because I'm pretty confident and persistent, and I know a lot about dating, and so I know when somebody's into me, even if they don't show any signs necessarily. And so it's one of those things where you can throw out signs, right? Throw him little, invitations. And if he decides to take it and run with it, that's great. And if he doesn't, then, there's only so much you can do to try to force a guy to do anything, right? And so you want him to take the ball and run with it. You want him to be the man, and you can show him some kind of invitation, but don't take on the pursuer, chaser, investor role at all. And you never want to do that unless you're in a committed relationship and there's a reason to do that in the committed relationship and it's a temporary thing. That's the only time that you want to do that. Nancy says, great subject. I'm with an introvert. Well, I'm glad it's a great subject. Rachel says, I send the guy things he likes. Is that good? Well, it depends on if he's sending you things that you like as well, right? If you're throwing a whole bunch of things at a guy and he's not picking up that ball and running with it, you need to stop what you're doing. Stop messing with that guy. Build abundance in your life, like what I talk about in the Forever Woman Formula, and make sure that you're not putting all your eggs in a basket with a guy that's not even into you, that doesn't like you that much, that's not taking the ball and running, that's not being the pursuer, that's not leading, that's not really into you, right? I've actually had women on my Instagram account from that just randomly like were trying to connect with me, and they just like have a full conversation with me, even though I'm not even responding back, and they're throwing things at me and all this kind of stuff. And eventually I block them because I'm like, what are you doing? And they think we're in a relationship and all this other stuff. Don't do that, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to be investing, which is what you're doing, throwing a whole bunch of things at him that he likes, but is he responding back? Is he connecting back? Is he sending you things that you like? Is he sending you things that he likes? Is he connecting with you? If he's not doing any of those things, you need to not worry about him and find a guy who's actually going to value you and pursue you and treat you like the amazing, awesome, wonderful woman that you are. That ultimately is what you want. If you're here with us right now in the comment section, tell us what your favorite color is. My favorite color is blue. Specifically, it's navy blue. I'm trying something different here. Let's answer some questions. What's your favorite color? Tell me what your favorite color is. Grandma says, do it mean anything if he say he really appreciate me? It just means that he appreciates you. It doesn't mean anything past he appreciates you. It means that he likes you to some degree. It could be a friendship degree. That could be it, right? It could be something more. But if you want to know if a guy really, really likes you from a romantic standpoint, there's one thing that you should be looking for, and that is his investment, his movement forward. He's investing in you emotionally, mentally, physically, from a time standpoint, from an energy standpoint. He's thinking about you a lot. If he's not doing any of those things, it really doesn't matter if he, what he's doing. So and it doesn't even matter if he likes you or not, because he needs to be able to step up, right? If you want a great relationship with a guy who's the masculine force in your relationship, you need to wait for a guy who's doing the masculine things in the relationship. Stop playing private detective and instead have a guy who's showing you for sure that he really likes you. That's what you want. Doreen says, I do a lot by myself because he is antisocial. Yeah, I mean, that can be a challenge for a lot of women in relationships with an introvert, is that, especially if you're an extrovert, that's one of the challenges, is that if you're introvert to introvert can be good. It can be bad though, right? Because you never end up leaving the house. If you're both introverts, you might just spend all of your time hanging out by yourselves and not leaving the house at all. If you're an extrovert and an introvert, what might end up happening is that as an extrovert, you're like constantly trying to get this person out of the house. And every once in a while you get them out of the house. And usually they have a good time when they're out of the house, but then they're like, I want to go back to the house, right? And so it can be a challenging thing. And you have to decide, depending on how much he's an introvert and how much you're an extrovert, whether that's a situation that actually serves you and that you want to be in long term. A lot of women get into these relationships because they feel something for a man and not because they actually are a good match for a man. So they're just like, oh, I feel it for him, and so this is it. And you need to use both your head and your heart when you get into a situation with a man, because you don't want to end up, a lot of women just use their heart and then they're in a situation that with a guy that's not really good for them. And a lot of women just use their brain and then they never end up connecting with guys. And so the guys aren't really that into them. And then they're like, what am I doing wrong? I never meet a good guy or whatever. And so I hope that answered your question there, Doreen. Speaking to Doreen. But I'm sure a lot of other people can use that knowledge and information. Joanne says, hello, Matt. Nice meeting you. Hello, Joanne. Nice meeting you too. Lots of people get it, Ivy says. I attract introverts. I am an extrovert. Wondering why that is. Well, one of the big things in relationships that a lot of times create passion, right? And a lot of times, extrovert women, for instance, are really attracted to me. Like they'll see me and they're like, oh my God, I just love this guy for whatever reason, right? And a lot of times there's a lot of passion in relationships like that because it's the differences that create the passion and it's the sameness that creates the connection. And so if you have a guy that's got opposite things as you, for instance, he's really masculine and you're really feminine, or he's really feminine and you're really masculine, or let's say that he's kind of got this dark side to him and you've kind of got this light side to you, or you've got the dark side, right, and he's kind of got this light side. Or the introvert extrovert thing. A lot of those things can create a lot of passion, right? Because it's that variety, it's creating that spice, it's creating that there's something interesting going on, there's something I don't understand about this guy, and there's something that he doesn't understand about me, and so they're really, I don't know, there's something about him that's it's just so interesting, and I just want to hang out with him all the time because he's an introvert, and it's just talk to me, let's hang out, and then you're hanging out. Maybe that's probably not what you're like, Ivy. I'm sure that's not what you're like, Ivy, but there is a lot of passion in the differences. Hi, Matthew. How can we connect with someone new and avoid contact tracing? Contact tracing. Let's see. I'm not familiar with that term. Contact tracing. Oh, so you're talking about the pandemic stuff. There's lots of ways that you can do that. You can connect with people online. You can sit far away from people when you're talking to them. You can do, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways around it, right? Ultimately, if you're worried about virus stuff, there's only so much that you can actually do about it. And if you have a lot of people in your life that you're worried about getting it, then it can be a legitimate concern for you, and you just want to make sure that you're not putting yourself into overly risky situations whenever you don't have to. And it depends on where you live. If you're just worried about it and you don't have anybody, if you're not somebody that's high risk and you don't have people at home or whatever, people that you're visiting on a continuous basis that that are high risk as well. It depends on where you live, right? Because there's certain places where you live where everything's open, everything's cool, and everything's good. And there's other places where you can live where everything's shut down and everybody's peeking out their windows and everybody's wearing a mask and they've got, these suits on and they're walking around town with the suits on and stuff. And so it really depends on where you live and how concerned you are with it and how worried you are about what's going on and how at risk you are. And you have to make intelligent decisions from that standpoint. But you can definitely connect with people through online, and you can definitely just stay a distance from people when you hang out with them and do the best that you can in order to make sure that you're not getting something if you're really, really concerned about it. If you're not concerned about it, then, do whatever you want to do. Nancy says, going on second year and learning more about him as time goes on, but he is totally a gentleman and we are getting more relaxed with each other as time goes on. That's cool. Aries says, 2 days, crazy women are crazy sometimes. It's true. I mean, for me, I'm like, it's just everybody has a blueprint though, I can sit here and rag on people who are like, they're this silly 2-day thing, right? But for some people, their blueprint is that they want to be connected with every single day, right? And they have, or maybe they have some kind of anxious anxiety thing, anxious I was just looking at it earlier today. Type. They're one of those types. Anyway, people have things where sometimes they want to be connected with a lot, and some other people have things where they don't want to be connected with nearly at all. And so there's middle grounds and there's far grounds and all that kind of stuff. And some people like different things, and so you just have to kind of communicate and figure out what works for different people and all that kind of stuff. And if you want to judge people. If you don't, you don't. So. CJ says, at first I thought he might be fake LDR because he was so slow, never spoke about anything personal, so many things went through my mind. But the time he opened up, it felt great. Cool. Cool. Aries says, women really need to focus on themselves at the beginning of a relationship. Men need space. They really do. Sometimes women need space as well. It was funny. I was talking to a friend of mine who's going through a lot of men's dating stuff right now, and he was talking about he was saying all these different things about what they say in the men's dating space, right? He's like, well, women need more space than men do, and women fall in love slower than men fall in love, and like all these different things, right? Like you need to give women, you just let them go, and then when they contact you and start pursuing you, that's when you. And I'm like, wow, it's funny because they say all the same things in the women's dating space, and he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, every single one of those things that you just said are very similar things that people teach in the women's dating space. And obviously, there's a middle ground, and that's where a lot of people kind of lose sight, right? Like when we talk about this idea of leaning back, I was actually reading a book from some woman who's a coach who was talking about how if you're, you should be leaning back, and when you lean back, you never initiate contact. And it was like, if you want guys to think that you're not interested in you and ghost you and never talk to you after a first date and all that kind of stuff, that's a great idea. And it's the same on the men's side, right? Like relationships are built together. They're not built by one person or the other. Otherwise, it's this really kind of weird, painful thing, which kind of comes from that. And so there's a middle ground, right? I always talk about the magic is in the middle, and you want to be in the middle in everything. And so lots of people need space. Lots of people don't need space. Lots of people need different things. And so you really need to connect with people and see what it is that they need. See what it is that is their blueprint. See what it is that they want and what they need and what's normal for them, what they think is normal, right? Because we might be talking here, and there's going to be some women in here that are like, it's really normal. I want him to be talking to me every single day, right? And then there's going to be some women in here that are going to be like, I only want to talk to a guy once a week or whatever. And so you have to find out what it is. You have to find out what their blueprint is, because everybody's different. And if you assume that this is the way that things should be, or this is the way that things are, and whatever, you're going to be very, very mistaken. All right, so Irene says, when he says that, I send songs and sketches anyway to both give you a potentially better day and to show I still appreciate your time. Is that meaning anything? It's always funny when women ask questions like this. He's saying exactly what he means in this, right? He's saying, I want to potentially give you a better day. I want you to have a better day, and I want to show you that I still appreciate your time. Now, he's saying that. However, you also want to look at his actions, right? I talk about a man's actions and his words, and I am not a believer in a man's actions or always speak louder than words. I do not believe that at all. A lot of women who believe that end up getting into really bad situations where a guy tells them at the very beginning that he doesn't want anything serious, but he acts like he does, and then they're 5 years into a situationship, and the guy's like, I've been telling you every time you've asked that this isn't serious, and she's like, but you treat it like it's serious. And so you want to listen to both, right? You want to listen to his actions and you want to listen to his words. And those are what mean a lot of things. And you should look at the two and then take the one that you want to least believe. And that's the one that's usually speaking the loudest. That is the one that is usually speaking the loudest. Speaking the loudest to me. So, what is great about you? That's the next question that we're asking. What is great about you? Tell us what's great about you in the chat. Tell us what's great about you in the chat. So, CJ says, another winner from Matt. Winner, chicken dinner. Thank you. I appreciate that, CJ. Let's see. Yeah, Aries is kind of responding. Yikes, when they say they need space, it does not. It means do not contact. Stop it with the songs. That's very needy. It's if you're contacting a guy and you're sending him stuff and he's not responding or whatever, right? Because we get some of that sometimes. Like I said, you need to just stop it with all that stuff. Stop it with all that stuff. Leslie says, we have been together for 8 months and we haven't said I love you yet. I'm waiting for him to say it first. You don't. First off, it's ideal. It's ideal if he says it first, but you don't have to wait. And there's also ways to kind of stair step your way up there, right? Because it's just a saying, right? You're saying that you love each other, which isn't necessarily the biggest thing. It might be the biggest thing to you, but it might not be the biggest thing to him. Maybe, right? Who knows? And you can say things that you love about being together and all that kind of stuff to kind of stair step your way up to that. And eventually he'll probably start saying it to you. However, I don't think it's the biggest deal. If he's been a really masculine guy, if he's been pursuing you, if you're in a committed relationship, if you're exclusive, if you're in a committed relationship, if he's telling you other things that are like, hey, you're the only woman for me, I want to be with you, like all that kind of stuff, it's not a big deal if you say I love you first. However, if he's not saying those things, if you haven't talked about exclusivity yet, if you're not in a committed relationship where he's told you that you're the one, you're all he wants, that he's in this and that you're doing this together and all that kind of stuff, doesn't matter any of the other stuff that you're doing. Those are the important things that you're doing. If you haven't done that yet, you definitely shouldn't be saying it because he's probably not in that space at all. And if you're 8 months in and you haven't been talking about those things, that's a big problem because he already knows at this point. He probably already knows what kind of a relationship he wants with you. By the 12-month mark, he definitively, without a doubt, no question, knows what kind of a relationship that he wants with you. They've done studies on this, and they found that around the 6-month mark, most men know exactly what kind of a relationship that they want with a woman. And so you have to make sure that you're doing things that are smart and getting yourself into a good situation and that you're not just wasting your time with some dude who's not moving things forward, who doesn't want the same kind of relationship that you want, who doesn't want the relationship you want with you and any of those other kinds of things. And so you definitely want to look at all that kind of stuff. And then the whole I love you thing can kind of come into play. If that's that, if it's not that, then you want to be questioning what's going on, where this is going and all that kind of stuff. Because you are in the space right now, Leslie, where he should be going one way or the other, right? He should either be, moving things forward, or he's in a space where he's like, I don't see you as somebody that's long-term. And so my suggestion is that you start figuring that out. You start having conversations with him now about those things so you don't end up wasting any more time with a guy that's not really into those things. Never assume exclusivity, never assume commitment, never assume any of those things. Doesn't matter if you've met his friends, doesn't matter if you've met his family, doesn't matter if he takes you on dates, doesn't matter if he's romantic to you, doesn't matter any of those things. If he doesn't talk about those things, if he's not moving things forward in those ways, do not assume those things to be true. Like I said, sometimes words speak a lot louder than actions do, and it does in situations like this. Potentially. So I don't know if that's your situation or not, Leslie. It might not be. However, those are things that you might want to think about. So Caroline says, hi from Montreal. How to ask him if he is still interested without him pulling away? Well, the concern for me that comes up when you ask this question, Caroline, is that you don't know if he's interested or not, right? Like, what situation are you in where you're confused, you're unsure about whether he's interested? So there's two kind of scenarios here that you could be in. The first one is that you're in a situation where he's not showing that he's interested in you. That's situation number one. Situation number two is that he does show that he's interested in you, but you're insecure about whether he's interested in you, and so you're scared of asking about whether he's interested in you. And I'm just going to address number two here. So if he's not showing that he's interested in you, right? He's not initiating contact. He's not, taking you out on dates. He's not showing interest in you. I don't know what your situation is. We're just going to assume that you're dating right now, but maybe you're in a committed relationship or something. But let's just assume that you're dating. If he's interested in you, he'll show you. And the way that he shows you is through his actions, right? He moves things forward. He takes you out on dates. He does all these things. Sometimes women still don't get it, right? They're like, oh, this guy drove an hour to come see me. Is he interested in me? He didn't hit on me. He hasn't tried to hook up with me yet. What's going on? And so in those kinds of situations, it's like, oh, okay, well, he's actually investing in you, and he really likes you. And it's obvious that he really likes you to me, right? And to probably him. He's probably like, oh my God, I'm investing all this time into coming and seeing you and doing all this stuff. How do you not know that I'm interested in you? And you might be kind of like insecure. And in the other situation, it's like if you're talking to him and he's not complimenting you, he's not doing all those kinds of things, then he's probably not that interested in you. And you need to pull back and you need to start, living your life and dating other people until he decides that he wants to step up. And if he doesn't decide that, then he's not going to decide that. And you're in kind of that situation, right? Like you can ask him if you want to, like, hey, are you still interested? As long as you're not attached to it, if you're not attached to whatever answer he gives you and you can take the brunt of whatever he says to you, then it's fine, right? If you ask him the question like, hey, are you still interested in me, right? Which is a question that you usually only ask, assuming that you're coming from a strong, confident, whole place. It's usually a question that you only ask when a guy's not actually interested in you, right? And so if you have to ask it, then you probably already know what the answer is. I mean, you can ask it if you want to. And, basically, you're kind of giving him the reins in the situation, which can be fine if you're kind of at a situation where you're like, this dude doesn't like me anymore. I might as well just ask him if he likes me or not, right? One, he might lie to you because he doesn't want to hurt your feelings. And a lot of guys know that women are going to lose their minds if he tells her the truth. And so he might end up lying to you. He might tell you the truth, right? And it might be that he is interested in you, but you're not a priority. And so you have to decide whether that's something that you want to stay in or not. If you ask him if he's interested, and you have asked him if he's interested before because you're talking about him pulling away, right? If he pulls away when you ask if he's interested, then he's not that interested, right? He's kind of in a situation where you're in a situation where, he's afraid of talking about it. He's unsure. He's scared. He's pulling away because you asked him if he's still interested in you. Then, he's not that into you anymore, right? If that's what he's doing, he's not that into you. It's just straight up. And so if you're in a situation like that, what you probably need to do is start pulling away yourself and start creating an abundance of connection, number one, so that you're not focusing all your connection on, what he's doing, and is he talking to me, and is he interested, and he's not, and so he's pulling away, and all this other stuff. And number two is you want to create an abundance of connection so that you have other options and all your eggs aren't in this basket about whether this guy is going to pursue you for the kind of relationship that you want, which it sounds like he's not, because you don't think he's interested and you're scared of him pulling away if you ask. So, it sounds like you're in a really tough situation there, Caroline, and I'm sorry to hear that, because that really sucks. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you're putting yourself into a good situation and you're allowing men who are going to put you into the situation that you want to be into to walk into your life, right? Because you don't want to spend all your time with a guy that's not that into you. You want to cut things off and walk away from situations where a guy's not treating you like you deserve to be treated, where a guy's not pursuing you like you want to be pursued, where a guy's not pushing you into a relationship that you want to be into. You don't want any of those situations. And if you try to force or manipulate or control him into that situation, you're just going to have a relationship that's based on control, manipulation, and force. And he's not going to be there because he wants to be there. And he's going to end up leaving at some point, because those techniques only work for a very short period of time, unless you want to continue doing them forever, which most people don't, right? They want a real, genuine connection. You want him to love you and connect with you and value you for who you are as a human being, for the authentic, amazing, awesome, beautiful woman that you are. You don't want him to fall in love with you and stay with you because you manipulated him somehow, or you're playing games with him, or any of that kind of stuff. And so walk away from situations that aren't worthy of you so that you can get into a situation where a man values you a lot more. Walk away from any man who treats you like $5 so that you can have a man who walks into your life who treats you like $1 million. Maybe $1 million isn't a lot of money these days. $1 billion, $1 trillion. Maggie says, I think I'm seeing an introvert. Your advice is good. Well, thank you. Crystal says, an introvert asked me to lunch a few weeks ago, but hasn't followed up with me just yet. I'm waiting for him to ask again. I don't want to push him when he is ready. When he is ready is all okay. He is really shy. Yeah. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. No, no. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Okay, so Jenny says, we spend every weekend together, but says we're really good friends who are open and honest with each other, but seems afraid to commit to anything, yet treats me better than anyone I've ever met, but not moving forward. I would love to see this move forward, but not sure how. Is he an introvert? Well, who knows whether he's an introvert or not. However, what we do have here is somebody who's treating you really well and who's afraid to commit. And so here's what you need to do. You need to pull back, right? Because if he tells you straight up, he's not looking to commit, he's not looking for a real relationship, he just sees you as friends, you have to believe him, right? And you can turn things into something romantic. But if he tells you he's afraid to commit, that's not going to turn into the relationship that you want to have. And so you have to decide, first you have to decide what's most important to you. the man or the relationship? My suggestion is that you focus on having the relationship, and that means having everything that it is that you want. And number two is you have to decide whether you're willing to walk away from the situation, which I suggest that you do either way, right? Because your best chance of him deciding that he wants to change is not, if you want him to change to committing to you and deciding that he's going to man up and commit and decide that he wants something real and that he doesn't want to lose you and all that kind of stuff, then you need to pull yourself out of that situation and start dating other people and get to a space where he's actually afraid to lose you, and communicate to him that he is going to lose you if he doesn't step up to the plate and decide that he wants a committed relationship. And so if he's already told you that he doesn't, that's great. Do not get physically intimate with this man. If you have, stop doing it. And two, start seeing other people, start building abundance in your life, start connecting with other men, start getting men into your man funnel who are going to try to compete with this man in order to get you into the relationship that you want. Communicate with him and be like, hey, have that conversation again about commitment. And when he tells you that he's not looking for a commitment, say, okay, that's cool. I'm starting to date again, and if you decide that you want to be in a real relationship, let me know at some point. If I'm still single, then we can talk about it, and if I'm not, then that's fine, right? And he might get mad and he might get frustrated and all that kind of stuff, and that's great, right? You want him to get mad and frustrated because he needs to decide that he wants to grow and let go of the past and become a bigger man in order to be in the relationship with you. Because if you get into a relationship with a man who tells you that he's afraid of commitment, and you get attached to him and you commit yourself to him and all those kinds of things, what's going to happen is you're just going to enable him, and he's not going to grow, and he's not going to become a bigger man, and he's not going to decide that he wants to let go of his past in order to create a better future with you together. And you're going to go into this, and it's going to be months, years, decades down the road, and then you're going to look back at it and you're going to be like, hey, I've been with this guy who's been willing to walk away at any moment because that's the mindset that he was in from the very, very beginning, and that he wasn't going to commit, and he decided that he didn't want to be in this with me anymore, and so he walked away. And so you don't want that. There's too many women that are in our community that are in those kinds of situations. And so my suggestion is that you start with getting abundance. It's one of the things that the least number of women that I talk to in our community want to do, but it can be one of the most impactful things that you can possibly do. Get out of the scarcity mindset and get into the world of abundance. There are a lot of men out there, and if you connect with them, many of those men are going to want to get into the kind of relationship that you want to be in, but those men can't come into your life. A great man who wants a committed relationship cannot come into your life if you're stuck with some dude who's not going to give you what you really want. So you have to decide whether the man or the relationship is most important to you, and then commit to that decision. And my suggestion is that you make it the relationship and not the man. And, and maybe you decide it is the man. Maybe you're like, hey, this man's treating me better than any man ever has treated me. It's not a commitment. He could walk away at any time. We're just dating forever until he decides that he doesn't want to date me anymore, and I'm fine with that. And a lot of women are fine with that. And if you decide that you're fine with that, own it and take responsibility for it, and that's fine. And if you want something more, if you want something real, if you want something where he's really in a relationship with you and it's not just this dating thing that you're doing forever, then make it about the relationship and not about the man. So Sandra says, do introverts normally open up and then back away? My guy said he pushed me away, which is weirding me out because I never said that. He said he needs to work on himself, but misses me lots. Yeah, I mean, that could be a whole bunch of different things going on. He could be just saying it, right? It could be that he does need some space. It kind of depends on how much time he needs and all that kind of stuff, and what kind of a relationship you're in, if you're in a relationship at all, or whether you're in just a dating scenario. And so, it could be, right, if he opens up. A lot of times when guys open up and connect, the amount of testosterone in their body actually drops, and then they need some time to pull back, right? And some women are like, why are you making excuses for these men when they're, doing these bad things? Well, sometimes it's not necessarily a bad thing. You just think that it's a bad thing, right? And so it kind of depends, right? And you just need to communicate with him and talk to him. And if he's not doing and creating the relationship that you want to ultimately have, if he's not pursuing you, if he's not doing all those things, if you're doing what a lot of women in the world are doing these days, which is going into the hookup culture, and you want something real, you need to make sure, like I was talking about before, that you get into something real and don't settle for just a hookup style situationship. So thank you everybody for being here today. I got to get going. I've got a lot of other things that are going on today, but thank you so much. It's an honor for me to be here. I hope you enjoyed this live stream, and I will speak with you again soon. And always remember, you are worth it. Have a great day, morning, night, wherever you are.